All right, sorry, we got started back a little bit late, but we will get going. Welcome back, everyone, from break. We are excited to hear from Kristy, and again, Tony supposedly not to read her bio again. But she's the CJC director here in Washington County, and going to be telling me a little bit about the CJCs and doing a little more deeper dive into the rights that children have as well. So we'll let her take it away.
And I didn't mess with the mouse, so it should still work.
Oh, technology, we love it. Hey, sorry, you got me again. So here we are. I am the director of our Children's Justice Center down here, and can I get a feel for who we've got in the room a little bit? Would that be okay? So if you are a systems-based victim advocate, will you? Okay. So community-based victim advocates. Got like a whole table of you right here. You're like in concentration. Okay, over here as well. Awesome. So we've got a mix. Looks like a few more maybe community-based than systems-based, right? So and there are differences. And you heard my friends from the county attorney's office talk about what some of those differences are. And the big one is that everything that is told to us, we have to pass along, right? It's all exculpatory. Nothing that is told to a systems-based victim advocate is confidential. So just kind of keeping that difference in mind. So there are 25 children's justice centers across the state of Utah. So I know we've got at least one CJC victim advocate here. Any others? Anybody else here from a CJC? Okay.
Online we do.
Online we do. Awesome. Hi, friends. So regardless of where you are in the state, you should have service from a CJC, from Cache County down to Grand. So like I said, 25 of us across the state, but we all report to our counties. We sort of have there's in the Attorney General's office, there is a CJC chapter that provides technical assistance and they administer our contracts for the money that comes down to us through the AG's office, but they're not the boss of us. Most of us report to our county attorneys, some to other, maybe a county commissioner or something, but usually we're gonna be like a redheaded stepchild of the county attorney's office. Did I say that out loud? I actually love our county attorney's office. We've had just fantastic people there that we work with. So grateful. So what is a Children's Justice Center? So a Children's Justice Center is a home-like child-friendly facility where children who've been victims of abuse or other crimes can begin the road to healing. And we're going to talk a little bit, we're talking about advocacy through the ages, right? So we're going to cover that in a couple of ways in the next few minutes. One, I'm going to give you a little bit of history on Children's Justice Centers and how they developed. And two, we're going to talk about ages in terms of, younger kids. How are things different for kids than they are for adults? And go through the code a little bit on that. And I promise I'm not gonna make you read code. Because is there anything worse? Like Stephanie, bless you. Who wants to read Utah code? Like nobody ever. Okay. You should also know that regardless of where your Children's Justice Center depending on where your Children's Justice Center is, there might be different services available there. Things are not going to look the same across the state at the different CJCs. So Weber Morgan is going to do things a little bit differently than we do here in Washington County, but we all are working to the same set of standards, and I'll talk about that in a minute. So CJCs, so this is the mission of us in Washington County. We collaborate with multidisciplinary partners to protect each child, advance justice, promote healing, and educate our community. That is for Washington County. Now, wherever you're from, They might have a little bit different mission statement, or they might not have one, but they probably have one. And it's probably gonna look a little bit different from this, but have some of the same components. So let's talk about a few of the things that are different for child victims as opposed to adult victims. So this is a picture from the inside of the fridge at the Children's Justice Center this morning. We have lots of juice boxes and Capri Suns. And we also have the full range of Dr. Pepper. So, because, you know, law enforcement needs to, okay, I need my caffeinated beverage in the morning, but we also are, everything that we are doing is gonna be through the lens of what is gonna be best for the child. That is our lens of how we do business. So if there's a way we can make it easier, more comfortable, more home-like, more safe, that's what we're gonna be trying to do for kids. So, and systemically, there are differences for children. For one, children don't get to choose whether the crime against them is reported or not. Adults who have been sexually assaulted get to choose whether they report or not. But we are a mandatory reporting state here in the state of Utah. So if you know or suspect there's been child abuse, you are required by law to report it. So kids don't get to pick that. There's also the age of consent that comes into a lot of our charging decisions with kids. I'm not an attorney, so I can't speak to it entirely, but I can tell you that other than when the legislature decides to do crazy things, which, you know, I don't have any legislators here, do I? Okay, usually the age of consent is 14, right? So if children can't consent, that you don't have to prove the consensual or not consensual piece that you have with adults. So that can help our charge. Stephanie's going, yep, you're right. So that can help us with charging decisions, right? If you've got that. And honest to goodness, there's a full-on matrix about that, about what the age difference is, and if it's, you know, 13 to 17 or 13 to 16, or there's legitimately an Excel spreadsheet. So don't try and figure it out on your own. Go to your prosecutor or somebody who can figure it out. And honest to goodness, it changes during the legislative session. We recently just had a change happen that was sort of well publicized this past session, where 18 and 13 now can be a thing, as long as the 18-year-old is still in high school. Okay. Additionally, there are additional rights for children who are victims on top of what adults have. So Stephanie and Miriam went through the victims' rights really well. That was a great review of what, and no matter how long we've been doing this, I think it's always good for us to kind of review those, right? And get in our heads what those rights are. So, but in addition to those rights, children have more rights. So we're going to talk about what those are and what they look like. So this is the code. You don't have to read it. I'll read it to you. In addition to the rights afforded to victims and witnesses under this chapter, child victims and witnesses shall be afforded these rights. And here's what they are. First, children have the right to protection from physical and emotional abuse during their involvement with the criminal justice process. Okay, I think adults should have that right as well, but we have it codified for children. So what does that look like? So children's justice centers were designed to look and feel like home. So you can see the picture on the left is a picture of a therapy room for teens. And the picture on the right is our waiting room, our kind of little kid corner in our waiting room for our mental health facility. So the idea is that it's supposed to feel safe. It's supposed to be child friendly. We don't have any plants that could be toxic. We have covers on the outlets. All of the things you can do to make that space appropriate for children. We do that. And that was the part of the original impetus behind having a children's justice center that's a building separate from the police department or the county attorney's office or whatever, is to have that child-friendly setting. So we started with the child-friendly setting, and what we add to that is forensic interviewing, and we'll talk about that in a minute. So here's the next thing. Children are not responsible for inappropriate behavior adults commit against them. Thank heavens. And have the right not to be questioned in any manner, nor have allegations made implying this responsibility. Does that happen? It can, right? We do our best to make sure it doesn't. Those who interview children have the responsibility to consider the interests of the child in this regard. And so you will find that most children's justice centers have moved to having a dedicated forensic interviewer. In some places, like here in Washington County, our forensic interviewer does forensic interviews. That's what she does. You heard Cass talking about her. Her name's Brooke Triplett. She's fantastic. She does what she does, and she trains other people to do what she does, and that's it. That's and she testifies at court. But she doesn't have other job responsibilities, and she's really good at it. So this is one of our forensic interview rooms. It isn't as pretty as Cass's. I need to get her decorator over. But everything about that room is about protecting the child. The gray couch is where the child would sit, and the orange chair is where a forensic interviewer sits. And you can't tell it, but you can see there's the one camera. There's a second camera as well. One is right in on the child's face, and the other captures the whole room. We need that legally. The wall behind the orange chair there is actually made of something called whisper wall, and it's all about keeping the sound inside the room so nobody outside can hear, and so that the child's not hearing what's going on outside. And you can see there's like weather stripping on that door. The picture that you kind of see that sunset or sunrise, who knows which, that is also we ordered it special that it absorbs sound. It's a sound absorbing photo. Big thick rug on the floor. That pillow that you can see is one of those sequin pillows. So it's can be a kind of a, not without being distracting, it can be a fidget for the child. So everything about that room is designed to create a safe space, a insulated space, and to keep that interview protected and private for that child. And comfortable. So this is where we would normally interview teens. We have another room that's outfitted for children, but you're not gonna, there will be no toys in there. There's not gonna be anything that's distracting in there. It's so that the child can better focus. So forensic interviews, we've got stuff going on top of my notes, so I'm gonna have to. Okay, so forensic interviews were the reason CJCs were invented in the first place. To do that interview that is needed for a child, to do it one time, to have it recorded, so the child doesn't have to be interviewed, as we were hearing earlier, over and over and over again. To do it in that homey environment. And originally, those interviews were done by usually law enforcement. And we have moved now to this dedicated forensic interviewer. Not every county is going to have one of those. You might have a detective or two who are designated to do it, or somebody, a CPS worker or two who are designated, but usually it's moving more toward the dedicated FI model. And why? Well, we heard about it before, right? Detectives are awesome and we love them, and they are really good at interrogating. And once in a while, you'll come across one who can be good at doing those open-ended questions like you heard about, of not leading. We never lead a child in a forensic interview. We follow a national protocol that's been vetted and holds up in court. Let's see, we use the child's own terms and language. So if a child says he licked my cookie, we're gonna clarify what a cookie is, and then the interviewer will use the same term that the child used. We'll, our forensic interviewers are trained in how memory works for children and what's age appropriate, what you can age appropriately expect from a child. Because a 3-year-old, they can say it happened yesterday, and it could have happened yesterday, or it could have happened last week. They don't know the difference, right? The investigators, like the adult interviews, watch in a different room. Only in this case, you'd have both the detective and a child protective services worker generally watching in another room. She'll still take the break near the end, check in with the investigators, see if there's anything else that they need. And the interview, like I said, is recorded. And not only is our forensic interviewer trained in, we call it FIT, forensic interview training, the investigators are as well. Because we know those investigators are gonna be doing interviews outside of the CJC for different things. And we want them to have that best practice under their belts. And they can also best influence the interviewer. They collaborate better if everybody's coming from the same set of forensic interviewing protocol. So there are investigators and across the state who have been trained in FIT. Next thing, child victims and witnesses have the right to have interviews relating to criminal prosecution kept to a minimum. We talked about that. That's why we record them. All agencies coordinate interviews and ensure that they are conducted by persons sensitive to the needs of children. So that leads us into our multidisciplinary team. And this is the heart and soul of children's justice centers, are these functioning MDTs that work these cases. For a children's justice center, we are required to have law enforcement, child protective services, medical, mental health, prosecution. We'll also have our forensic interviewer there. And these MDTs work the cases together as professionals, so they're not hitting up parents and kids from all sides. So, any questions about that? Any of you have worked with your MDTs locally?
We actually have our school districts participate. We have somebody from the schools, which has been really helpful.
Yeah, some CJCs do add schools in. We also will add in GALs sometimes. So there are others who can be super helpful on those multidisciplinary teams. And this picture is of probably about 2/3 of our MDT. And we took that at the annual CJC symposium. We have it at Snowbird every May. Why do we have it at Snowbird? Because ski resorts are cheap in May. They're metals. So we go off the mountain, take our MDT and do a dinner. And it's a great bonding. And we meet with our whole MDT once a month. We have trainings, the torture presentation that we did earlier today, our MDT got earlier this week. We'll have other trainings. We have lunch together. We have CJC Jeopardy every December. Brooke Triplett is a ringer. Actually, she usually puts up the questions. Her husband's the real ringer. Anyway, so our MDTs are just this heart and soul and the core of what we do. And so key to making sure that, again, the interviews are kept to a minimum and that everybody's coordinating with each other. And that goes to that additional right that children have. Along those lines, I'm going to take a short detour here. This is a slide that I use often when I'm talking to parents and others in the public. But I think it's important for us all to remember and maybe use as we're talking in the public. So when a child discloses abuse, here are the do's and don'ts. Do listen. Do not interrupt a disclosure. Once they started talking, let them talk. But do not ask questions. And that is so hard, right? We all are just curious. We want to know. But if we don't need to know, we shouldn't ask. So don't ask questions. It can cause problems for prosecution down the line. Do not promise a solution. You can't promise a child you're gonna keep them safe because you have no control over that. So, so never promise a solution, but do thank the child for telling you. Do reinforce with the child that it is not their fault. Because they probably think it is. Do tell the child that you will report the abuse and then report it. And whatever it was that you were doing that made that child know that they could talk to you, keep doing that. Okay, next, right, child victims have the right to be informed of available community resources that might assist them and how to gain access to those resources. Law enforcement and prosecutors have the duty to ensure that child victims are informed of community resources, including counseling prior to the court proceeding, and have those services available throughout the criminal justice process. So the CJC services that we provide are all about that. So we have system-based, as we talked about, victim advocacy. We'll do some crisis intervention, and we will connect families with resources in the community if they need resources for food or resources for housing or help with a letter to an employer or child protective orders. We can do all of those things. We have a medical team here in Washington County. Our medical team is located at our CJC. Some of your bigger CJCs, other than Salt Lake and Utah counties, have that. I think you have one in Weaver Morgan. On staff. They are actually employed, our medical teams, most of them. There are exceptions, but in most counties, the medical team is employed by Primary Children's Hospital, Safe and Healthy Families. And they can do anything from take pictures of bruises all the way through rape kits for children. And it is game changing to have medical in the building with us. It's amazing. We also will do, most children's justice centers will do trauma and suicidality screening. We use a tool that was developed by the University of Utah and in conjunction with Primary Children's Hospital. And we use those results to help show parents that kids identify whether kids need therapy in a quick screener and help parents know what their kids are actually going through. Because you can have a 14-year-old who might not be sleeping ever at night, and mom or dad might not know that. So helping parents understand what if any trauma response their child is having can be so key in helping that child to heal. And it can be key in motivating families and parents to get the child involved with therapy. All children's justice centers have some kind of a therapy resource, whether it's a referral list to trauma-informed, evidence-based providers, or some have staff therapists that actually work as part of their CJC staff. We have one. Some have contracts with therapy groups within their community. We have that as well. If you've got the money, it's a great investment. If you don't have the money, therapy is really an expensive piece of the puzzle. So, but again, having a therapist on staff and in our building has been game changing for us. It's been awesome. And then we have another therapist who comes into our building to do on a contract basis to do therapy with kids. And then we have others just in the community. So therapy services so important. This is going to be short term. This is not going to deal with complex trauma. It's going to be short term about the immediate trauma response. It's usually 12 to 20 sessions, depending on where you are and what the funding source looks like. It needs to be an evidence-based modality. So we're looking at things like EMDR, TFCBT, child family interaction therapy, along those lines. There are six modalities that we can, different modalities that have been approved through our national accrediting body, which I'll talk about in a minute. And then we will connect our victim advocates in Washington County will then connect the family with the victim advocate at the county attorney's office. with the ones that are gonna sit with you through court. Now, if they want us to sit with them in court, we will absolutely do that, and we do that sometimes. But Cass, I mean, you met Cass and Miriam, they're amazing. And they're the ones who that's kind of their bread and butter and what they're really, really, really good at. So we'll do that warm kind of handoff with the family. We check in with families. We'll text or call them after a couple of days, after a couple of weeks, after a couple of months, just to touch base with them. The other thing that we do is, you heard Cass talk about case reviews. We will do a full MDT case review when law enforcement thinks they've got their case. And or anyone on the MDT can ask for a case review, and we'll have everyone who's been involved in that case come to the case review and talk through, okay, here's what we found, here's what the interview said, here's what the suspect said, here's, and the prosecutor will be there and usually decide right then, okay, here are the charges, or go back and get me some more evidence, or do this other interview. But usually we can get a charging decision in that case review. That's awesome. That has really helped. Once we instituted that kind of case review, it helped alleviate what can sometimes be can any of you have black holes at your prosecutor's offices? Where they say, we'll send it in for review, and then what, right? And I think it's really helpful for the prosecutors to have all the people in the room who know what's going on, give them the case. And our mental health folks will be there, our medical will be there. It's a pretty cool thing. So, any questions about anything so far?
I do have a question.
Yeah.
So you said something about child protective orders.
Yeah.
That's something your CJC does.
Our CJC will do child protective orders for our clients. Not every CJC will. There was a minute where we weren't because we didn't have anybody trained to do them, but some will. Yeah. Yeah. And if they don't do them, they can refer to usually a law enforcement agency, victim advocate who can. Yeah. Anything else? Okay.
Nothing in the chat either.
Nothing in the chat either. Okay, we're gonna blow through this. Okay, so we're almost done. I talked a little bit about our national accrediting body. It is called the National Children's Alliance, and they have 9 standards that all children's advocacy centers across the country should, if they want to be accredited, need to fulfill. And the book is like this thick of stuff you got to do to become accredited. It's really actually quite complicated and hard, and not all TJCs in Utah choose to be accredited. But whether they're accredited or not, whether they go through that process of accreditation, they should be living up to those standards according to our contract with the AG's office. And they give us the standards for how we deal with our MDTs and information sharing, and what case review should look like, and who should be there, and what kind of training our forensic interviewers need to have, and what kind of training our medical people need to have, and what kind of training our victim advocates need to have, and what kind of resources we need to be able to provide. It's a long and exhaustive and exhausting list of things that we should be doing to be able to be providing this a standard of care that would allow accreditation. And you see it says that it's for children's advocacy centers, and you all probably know this, but I'm just going to remind you that what we do as CJCs here in Utah, in 48 other states, would be called a children's advocacy center. And you should also know, in case you have cases that cross state boundaries or whatever, that there are children's advocacy centers across the country, and you can find out where the nearest one is if you go to the National Children's Alliance website. But they're all going to look different, and just like, I mean, here every county is going to look different because it's going to be responsive to their community. We're a prosecution-based children's advocacy center, and all the ones in Utah are, but outside of Utah, a lot of them are standalone not-for-profits. And you might have one here and in Pittsburgh, and I'm just making this up. I don't know what Pennsylvania's is, but in Pittsburgh, and a different one in Philadelphia, and they may or may not talk to each other, right? So they might not have the same kind of coordination that we have here in Utah. Here in Utah, you can tell me your county, and I can tell you who your CJC director is. And we talk to each other frequently. it is rare that I have a week that I don't have a Children's Justice Center director from somewhere else in the state emailing the group or me, asking for pictures of your interview room. I got that one this week. I had a phone call as I was walking in today. I hear you might know somebody who can help me set up a 501c3 so we can have a friends board. Can you give me the name? We do that all the time. And it is so wonderful to not be doing this work alone. We have CJCs in the most far-flung places you can imagine, Grand County and San Juan County and Duchesne. And I mean, some of these folks working in these rural areas, Kane, we have a CJC in Kane who has one person who works part-time there. They're doing it in so much alone unless we have this network, this fabric across the state of people who can back each other up. I think that is one of the number one things that can lead to longevity in these jobs. Is if you have, and hopefully SWAVO provides that for some of you, that network of people across the state who have your same kind of tender heart and your same kind of strong stomach that can take these cases and see these victims and work with them through the most horrific parts of their life and keep and have those victim advocates keep going. You need to have people that you can reach out to for resources, for I just need to vent, for whatever that is. So I hope you all have that. If you don't, please find that community. And I know that the folks at UOBC are chomping at the bit to help you do that. and can help you if you've got a specific thing that they've got fingers all over the place and they can help you connect you to the right person who can help you walk through whatever that is. So that is all I have unless anybody has questions. And the other thing I always do is put up the child abuse reporting hotline. So if you don't have that number in your phone, please put it there because you are mandatory reporters. Any questions or? Awesome. Thank you.